Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, everyone around the globe. Welcome to this important topical discussion where we'll be discussing some of the tips for job interviews, CV writing, and cover letters. Thank you all for joining us. Today, we will be talking about employment, which generally means the state of having a paid job or being employed. To employ someone is to pay them to work. An employer provides employment to employees. Employment can also be referred to the act of employing people. In order to get employed, it is important that we prepare well, starting with the preparation and submission of CVs and cover letters, written and oral interviews, reference check, and finally being given an offer. Basically, when it is time to apply for a job, many of us more often feel stuck figuring out how to explain our background and experiences in a way that will be compelling to employers. It is common for many of us to sell the great skills we have developed to date. I will be your moderator today. My name is Miklina Kenyi. I am a founder and executive director for a nonprofit organization called Empowerment Through Education Foundation, ETE, based in Boulder, Colorado. ETE Foundation has been instrumental in helping resettled young women from South Sudan to the United States of America and empowering them educationally. I hold a bachelor's degree in both political science and women and gender studies, and a master's degree in educational foundation policy and practice from the University of Colorado in Boulder. Currently, I'm working with a nonprofit organization as an individual and family advocate. Before we start our discussion, I would like to briefly introduce our great panelists. I will start with Ms. Anyeth Akol Ditut. She's not here, but I will just go ahead and introduce her and she will join us shortly. Ms. Anyeth holds a BA degree in International Relations from Bangalore University in India and a master's degree in Human Resource Development from Sheffield Hallam University in UK. Ms. Anyeth have worked extensively in both the public and private sector for over a period of 21 years. In government, she served as the Undersecretary for Human Resource Development from 2010 to 2011, and then as Undersecretary for Public Service and Human Resource Development from 2011 to 2015. She has extensive experience working with various humanitarian and international organizations, such as the UNDP, UNICEF Sudan, and OLS. After leaving government, she was appointed as the head of HR with Kenya Commercial Bank in Juba, South Sudan, 2016. Currently, she is working with the Africa CDC as a senior HR officer and interim head of administration and management. Ms. Anyeth, you are welcome. Next, I have Ms. Jocelyn Itrom. Ms. Jocelyn holds a Bachelor of Law and Master's in Government, Peace, and Security Studies, both from Kenya. She has 7 years' experience in the protection and peace building fields and has worked with different organizations in South Sudan, Bangladesh, and Iraq. She is currently working with the UN Migration as Durable Solution Officer based in Baghdad. Ms. Jocelyn, you are welcome. Next, I have Ms. Keji Kojo Sanders Salvatore. Ms. Keji was born and raised in Khartoum, Sudan. In 2007, her family migrated to Wisconsin, USA. She has a Bachelor of Arts in International Politics and Masters in International Education. She taught 6th through 8th grades and held program planner position for Center for Women and Gender Equity at Bowling Green State University. Most recently, she's been responsible for hiring political campaigns staff for 2020 US presidential election to advocate for systematically marginalized communities. Ms. Keji also manages 2 blogs, Blackness Across Borders and Unbordering Stories. Both blogs focuses on topics of race, gender, and class, and migration. Unbordering Stories focuses on interviewing African women across the globe to retell African stories and challenge anti-Blackness and stereotypes about African people. Ms. Keji, you are welcome. Next, I have Ms. Achek Abel. Ms. Achek is a certified HR professional with over 10 years of human resource management experience. The last 5 years, she has been in the private sector arena in Belgium and in the USA. She has substantial experience in strategic human resource planning, performance management, recruiting and staffing, federal and state law compliance, employment contract negotiations, employee benefit compensation and payroll, training and development, and management coaching. She is currently pursuing her MBA and holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree in Human Resource Management from the Management College of Southern Africa. From 2008 to 2016, she has worked with the Carter Center Foundation and UNICEF in different capacity in Juba, South Sudan. She is a member of Society of Human Resource Management. Ms. Achek, you are welcome. Next, I have Ms. Agaba Lucy. Ms. Lucy is an educational policy evaluation specialist and a founder of Alpha School Congo in Western Equatoria. Ms. Lucy is very passionate about girls' child education. She participated actively in civil society organized group under Democracy International that promotes girls' child education in Yambio. In 2012, Ms. Lucy established Alpha Christian Academy Community School. And through that school, she has provided numerous bursary schemes to more than 137 girls who are beneficiaries in Yambio. In 2016, she received the Civil Society Leadership Award from Open Society Foundation. Ms. Lucy holds master's degree in education, teaching, and curriculum from Syracuse University, New York, and a bachelor degree in public administration and management from Kampala International University in Uganda. She has extensive administrative professional experience in both private and public sector. She is a community mobilizer and facilitator for German Red Cross Society in Western Equatoria State. She worked as a senior inspector for budget planning at the State Ministry of Physical Infrastructure and Public Utility in Western Equatoria. Ms. Lucy, you are welcome. Welcome, Ms. Anyeth, excuse me. I will now start our first question. Excuse me, I will now start our first question with Ms. Anyeth Ako. Ms. Anyeth, why is having a well-presentable CV and cover letter important when someone is looking for a job or changing their jobs? What is the most important information that every CV and cover letter should have?
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody. First of all, I must apologize for where I am currently. I'm in a very noisy place. I'm at the airport. Actually, I just landed from Addis. I'm in Chicago. So please bear with me if you can hear a lot of background noises because I couldn't find a quieter place to sit. Coming back to the question you posed, and thank you for hosting me today. Some of the most important things you need to have in your CV are, I'll just get straight to the point. Your CV must have some important biodata information about yourself. Your CV must have information about your contact details because at the end of the day, the whole purpose is to make it accessible for you to be found. Your CV should have detailed information about your qualifications, your experience, your skills and attributes relevant to the position. The reason I stress on the issue of relevant to the position is that oftentimes we tend to bring in a lot of information which might not necessarily be related to the job position we're applying for. So here we need to be careful that whatever information we put in our CV or in the cover letter should be reflective of what the position advertised is and should be relevant to it. Not everything you have done in your life should come in your CV. Your CV should also have a detail on the institutions you have worked with. It should provide some background about uh, the renowned places you have worked because it also plays a big role. Sometimes when you have well-known institutions as your employer, it ups your chances of being considered for the position. Your CV should also have your references. Remember, your references should always be up to date and current. In a lot of cases, we just put in names, not necessarily people who know us, but it is important that when we do that, we put in somebody who can give a positive and accurate information about us in the CV. So basically, these are some of the things which should be in your CV. You can also list out any trainings, any certifications you have done. These days, it's not just enough to go through university. You need to also look at professional bodies. For example, if you're an accountant, being a member of ACCA or having done the CPA and so on can up your chances of being considered. So include that. Any courses you have done relevant to the position being discussed or position for which you're applying could also make a big difference. Lastly, a lot of us do write. We have publications, and these publications, if possible, and are relevant to the position, include it in your CV. So, in a nutshell, this is what your CV should include anything relevant to the position and people whose contacts can improve your chances as your referees and all the other things that I've mentioned. Over to you. I'm sorry, you're
Hello? Okay, I have a follow-up question. What are the great tips for building a perfect CV?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I think I've partly answered that question when I mentioned on what a good CV should entail. So basically, when you're building your CV, make sure it is concise, it is clear, and it's not bringing in irrelevant information. Make sure that whatever is reflected there can sell you well to the employers who are looking for people to employ. So basically, make sure your CV presents a good first image of yourself because that's the first way through which people will know you through your CV and your cover letter. If you prepare a cover letter that summarizes your purpose for the job, the skills you have, the qualifications you have, the experience you have, these two combined with your CV will definitely present a very good image and will catch the eye of recruiters who are looking to recruit people. So, in a nutshell, your CV should be a reflection of yourself, confidently presented, and what you can offer for the institution that is recruited. Over to you.
Thank you so much. This is so good. Yeah. So many times people keep hearing about long list and short list during job recruitment. What are those? And what are the different stages of recruitment processes?
Okay, as a recruiter, I would say that usually when we receive applications, we don't necessarily receive people with all the right qualifications. We could have set out a list of criteria in the job description, and within those criteria, some people might fit. And then later on, after you sift through that long list, the initial list, you go on to a much more smaller list, which would be the short list now, where you have people with added advantages. Sometimes when you read a CV, for example, you would have a situation where they would mention having worked with, for example, Microsoft would be an added advantage. Having worked with that same institution is an added advantage. Those additional qualifications, additional qualities are what could make you enter the final shortlist, which is the list of the best qualified people to be considered for an interview. The long list would represent all those who meet the criteria, but the shorter list are those who are meeting it and beyond. Over to you.
Wow. This is really great ways to know deeply like how this recruitment processes happen. I'm going to move to Ms. Jocelyn for our a question. What is considered a good CV and a cover letter that gets noticed immediately, according to you?
Right. Thank you for that question. And I just want to say that I'm glad and happy to join the panel today because the issue with CV and cover letter is something that a lot of people are facing, especially job seekers. And my colleague Angeth has already touched on the different parts of a CV, but I think it's very important to emphasize, to elaborate more on what makes it a good CV, what makes you land that job, or what makes you to be called for an interview. And I think the most important thing is, as a job seeker, you need to know, you need to read the job description, and that's what most people tend to forget. You have to read from word to word. You have to make sure that you understand the job description, and you have to tailor your CV according to what the hiring manager is looking for. So the mistakes that most of the job seekers do is that we have a generic CV, whereby you have this CV that you've had it for the last 2 to 3 years. So you keep on sending it to potential employers. So the thing is, you have to read it and then make sure that you pick those things, that the experiences that are needed in that job description, and then you tailor your CV according to that. So if, for example, if an employer is looking for someone who has a certain skill, maybe in protection, and in protection, I mean, like, you need to have some competency with regards to case management, with regards to protection monitoring, then you have to tailor your CV according to that. You have to make sure that you mention that you have these competency in that specific area. So this is because most of the time, like, hiring managers, I'm speaking as, because I don't have any background in HR, but I've been able to work as a manager, and most of the time we have a lot of CVs, and we don't have enough time to go through all those CVs. So there's a quick look at this CV. So most of the time we have to make sure that we look for certain words, for certain job requirements that we've already posted in the advertisement. The other thing is also be short and sweet, as my colleague has mentioned before. You have to make sure that it is concise, it's precise, and it's to the point. We have a lot of people writing a lot of stories, and sometimes it becomes monotonous and a bit boring for hiring managers. Most of the time, people are busy, and they just want to make sure that it's a quick fix. Um, there's another thing that you have to make sure that your CV, you have to emphasize on your skills. Apart from the experience and the competence that you have to emphasize on some skills. You have to make sure that, like, it can be communication skills, which is very key. And sometimes people tend to miss it out. You have to emphasize that you're able to communicate, because most of the time that we work with other people, it's not, you're not alone in an office. You have to know how to communicate both, orally and in written form. And there are so many other ways of presenting your skills. And then we also have skills of computer skills. We have skills that are specific to that job. It could be like a protection. Sorry, I'll keep on talking about protection because that's my background. So I will be looking at someone who is able to communicate with beneficiaries, someone who has the skills of detail oriented, because we have cases that we're dealing with beneficiaries that have maybe very sensitive issues. So we have to make sure that that person is detail oriented. The other thing with the CV, when we go to the cover letter, there's a mistake that most job seekers do. Is they rehearse what they have already written in their CV. So it's a copy paste of what they have already written in the CV. They're putting it in the cover letter, which is a very big mistake, because the cover letter is where you're supposed to sell yourself. You're supposed to emphasize why you should be taken, like you should be hired for that position. So there are many people with the job experience, but then you need to make sure that you present yourself in a manner. An example, it could be that you have to talk about your achievements. You have to talk about the years of experience that you've had, and why you think you're the perfect person for that position. So the cover letter, in most cases, is the one that lands you at a job interview, or to be shortlisted. I think my colleague has touched base on most of these things already. And sorry, okay, yeah. And then there's another tip that I really want to make sure that people get it. And when we're talking about experience, there are certain words that we have to make sure that we mention. It could be issues like developed. That you have to make sure that within that, in your previous position, you were able to develop something. You were able to organize maybe an event that was successful. You also have to mention that you were able to achieve something, because we are not looking for someone who has worked in several organizations for long while they have not achieved anything. So you have to make sure that these words are very key. You have to mention that I've achieved this. I was able to organize such a thing, and it really was successful. The other thing is, like, if you're looking for a managerial position, you have to make sure that the word about management, I was able to manage a team of this and this and this. So instead of just writing a generic CV or a cover letter, you have to make sure the words that you're choosing are actually reflecting to that specific role that you're supposed to cover. So I think that is it from my side, and maybe my colleagues can add more to it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from the audience to Ms. Anyet. Someone is asking, what is the difference between resume and CV?
Okay, from my understanding, it's just a difference of language used. In the British context, CV is what we use to describe this information that we normally give about ourselves. While in the American context, we have a situation where we call it resume. So this is the experience I've had. This is the only difference, that Americans tend to call it resume. And there might be some slight differences, but basically it's a presentation of it among Americans as a resume, while for us, the other British former colonized part of the world, we call it curriculum vitae or CV. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Let me move to Ms. KG now. KG, I have a question for you. What do you consider as an excellent CV?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So some of the things I'm going to mention are going to sound a little basic, but I only bring them up because I've seen people make those mistakes. And my colleagues on this panel have already emphasized it. But the first thing I would say, make sure that your resume is accessible. I cannot emphasize how many times I've run into applicants who submit something and then I can't even open it on my end because it's password protected or it's in some format that as the hiring team, we can't even open it. So just make sure that number one, your resume is accessible so that you can get your foot in the door. It's a lot of work for us to reach out and say, hey, we can't open your resume, so please can you change the format and everything like that. So just make sure that it's accessible. I also look at the template, like, is it easy to read? Is it organized? What is it saying about your organizational skills? If it's super hard to digest, I'm not going to spend too much time because it's like, is this kind of the kind of product that you're going to have at work? So there are a lot of templates out there like Canva, or if you just Google like resume templates, that can help you a lot. And then updated contact information is something I also look for. And like I said, some of the things I mentioned are going to sound basic, but I've seen those mistakes happen so often that's why I'm bringing it up. So make sure that you have updated contact information top and center of your resume so that if I want to schedule you for an interview, I can get a hold of you very easily instead of calling the wrong number. Like, I'm not going to try to like reach out or Google you and try to do all this work. So make sure that you have updated contact information there. And then make sure you have the most important information top and center, because I'm only going to spend a few seconds looking at your resume. I'm not going to dig to page 3 or page whatever to find the most crucial information. I'm only spending a few seconds just top and center of the page. So make sure that you have the most important and critical information there. And then for each job, I just want to emphasize, like, quantify the things that you've done. So if you are a manager or if you're a director for this position, tell me, how many people did you manage? Like, oh, I managed a staff of 15 and I initiated the employee recognition program, or I organized a fundraiser with 1,000 people who showed up and we raised $1 million. So put some numbers so that I can understand, like, what did you actually achieve? And are you ready for this transition? And the other thing I'll mention, just have friends or somebody review your resume. Like, before you submit your materials, before you do anything with it, just have other people take a look at it and provide you with feedback. That can save a lot of time, and that can also just help you get your foot in the door. So those are some of the basic things that I'll mention. As far as just kind of like what I look for in a cover letter, I want to see up top that you actually research the organization, like the first paragraph, just a few sentences about like, this is the job I'm applying for at this organization because of this. And then in the middle, my colleagues have already mentioned it on this panel, just highlight the specific concrete skills and achievements that line up with this job. I've seen so many cover letters that just read like they've been copied and pasted for so many different jobs. Like, the name of the organization is wrong. The name of the position is wrong. The skills that they list have nothing to do with the job. So just kind of make sure that you're paying attention, you're staying organized, because it tells me a lot of things about the materials that you submit. And it tells me a lot about your ability to pay attention to things, your communication skills. So those are some of the things that I'll mention.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have a follow-up question. Is cover letter important, and why? And how long should a cover letter or CV be?
For me, I think a cover letter is important. Keep it one page, because if it's more than one page, I'm probably not going to spend that much time reading it. And kind of like I mentioned, the first paragraph, just a few sentences about the job that you're applying for and showing me that you research our organization. And then the middle paragraph, keep it solid. Just if it's bullet points of key skills that line up with the job, and a closing paragraph, that's just a few sentences, that would be wonderful. So just keep it one page. If it gets really long, I don't have time. Like I said, I spend a few seconds just looking at the cover letter, a few seconds looking at the resume. So keep it straight to the point. A lot of times it depends on the job. So I've been part of hiring teams where we have the cover letter as optional because we have our own organizational questions that we want you to answer. And we have like essay questions for you to speak about. So it depends on the organization. So pay attention to what's required if it's optional. And then there are supplemental questions that you need to answer. But just to play it safe, have a cover letter, that one solid paragraph, and just make it straight to the point.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm moving now to Mr. Check. Mr. Check, what do you expect in a good CV and cover letter? I know she answered some of them, but I would love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Michelena. Good morning, good evening, good night to everybody, and thank you for joining us on this session. Most of the points that I had have already been covered by my fellow panelists, but I will say this. A cover letter should, or a good CV, will provide an employer with an overview of who you are as a student or a young professional or a seasoned professional, what you do, how best you do it, and in relation to the position of interest and what relevant skills, traits, and accomplishments you have achieved at this point in your education or career. Therefore, what I expect in a good CV, as all the contents basically are, start with the wow. What is that is impressive, important, and valuable about you as a candidate? So these are the things that you want the recruiter to instantly know about you and will be impressed and interested and eager to learn more. So the wow statements are specific. They tell what you did, not what someone in a similar job might have done. So it could be the experience. Instead of starting with experience with the job description for each position you held, start with the achievements in that job. If you're a recent graduate with limited experience, work experience, then your education section becomes the showpiece of your CV or your resume. Honors and awards, those distinguish you from the rest of the applicants as well. Another thing that I as a recruiter, I look at is what are your objectives? How do you align with this position that we have put out here? So as an applicant, one reason that you create your CV or your resume is to position yourself for your next job. So when you know what jobs you want, you know what skills are in demand and what the employers value the most. So this is the information that becomes the foundation upon which you build your entire CV or your resume. Point to note is that it's not recommended to include objectives for the vast majority of the job seekers. The summary portion of the CV, resume has replaced that. So you can tell the employer what you can do for them and the value that you bring to the organization, your strongest areas of experience, and what you should entice a potential employer to contact you. So a pro tip here is to identify your top skills and interests and then match them to the available opportunity or the position that you are eyeing. And then write with meaning and power. Take writing as another marketing document. And here you are the product. So you're selling yourself. And the more powerfully you can write about it, the more enticing you'll be. Because don't forget that there will be a high volume of applicants. So what will stand out for you or your CV and cover letter? So, and as my fellow panelist, KG had mentioned, you have to quantify your achievements, mean that percentages and numbers do not lie. And those are valuable to include in your resume or CV because they are measurable indicators of your performance. And, lead with strong words, which is something very basic. However, they are very important. So, and write with umbrella terms. There's some terms that we look for, and especially with our world now with the internet, the employee tracking systems, you should eliminate words or phrases that you don't need. Write very precise. Write clean, tightly, and these refer to techniques that impact every single item on your resume, from minor things like location and contact information to major items such as job descriptions, achievement statements, project highlights, or something, things like that. So finally, I will say leave the muscle and lose the fat. In simplified words, it refers to the fact that you want to eliminate unnecessary details, which I refer to the fat, and focus on what's important to prospective employers, which is the muscle. And you can use different strategies for this, and they are available and at our disposal. And finally, integrate critical keywords. The keywords are the backbone of an electronic resume scanning technologies and applicant tracking systems. So nearly all companies now, or recruiters, use keywords as the primary method to identify qualified candidates. And these are the words that will help you get in all types of online forums. So in online searches, candidates will, selection has evolved into an almost entirely technical function. And you as a job applicant must understand how the technical function works. So know the keywords for the job that you're targeting. And I will conclude with format your CV. Format is very, very important. The most acceptable one is the chronological system, where you go in a chronological order, starting from the most recent item or experience that you've had, or the most recent position that you've held, all the way down. Make it very precise, as Jocelyn had mentioned. Make it very, most of the recruiters now just skim through it. They do not have time to go to page 7 to find what's important about you. So you must make it very skimmable, precise, short, and sweet. And the same applies also for your cover letter. Your cover letter is the first contact where your employer will meet you. So it just do not summarize your entire CV in the cover letter, as was already mentioned. So it should just be a 1 page, 2 or 3 paragraphs, 3 to 5 paragraphs. And they should include a self-introduction, an argument of rationale, or rationale for the strong connection between what you have to offer as a potential employee and what the employer needs in order to fill the position or responsibilities. So, and then a closing statement with your up-to-date contact information. And also a pro tip here, like just the resume or your CV, the cover letter must also be well-written, grammatically correct, and visually appealing. Anything less may dissuade a potential employer from considering you for the position in question. Over to you.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Anyeth, and I think she has dropped down now. I will bring the question. It's from the audience once she's back. Let me move to Ms. Lucy. Agaba Lucy, do you think having the necessary qualification is important when applying for any job? Why is that? And why not? I know some of the panelists answered, but we want to hear your take on this. Oh, she's having issues with connection. Okay, Agaba, did you hear me? Agaba, Lucy, I said, do you think having the necessary qualifications is important when applying for any job? Why is that? If yes, and if not, why not?
My network is having a little bit of problem, like off and on, but I have had you now. Having the necessary qualification is very important when a candidate is applying for a job, because jobs have their own technicalities. Because if you apply if you don't have the necessary qualification and you go in for the job, you may not be able to perform to the expected standard, because you don't have what it takes, the training it takes, like the resilience, the problem solving skills, and Like for instance, if somebody is not qualified and you go in for a job which is maybe uh, teaching. So there are technicalities involved, like you have to skim the work, the lesson plan. So if you don't have all those, at the end of the day, you may not perform to the best of what is expected from you. So having the necessary qualification helps a candidate to know that that job that is being advertised, I'm a suitable candidate for it. And at the same time, also it attracts a pool of qualified candidates to apply for that job. And besides, it acts as a tool for the HR or the employer to select the best candidate or the right fit for that specific job. So it is all about the competence. Having this qualification gives you the competence to do the job to the expectation of the hiring managers.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Now I'm going to move my next question to Ms. Jocelyn. Ms. Jocelyn, what are the most important factors to consider during oral or written interviews? You are unmuted. You are unmuted. You are muted. Can you unmute? Thank you.
Sorry, Miss McLean, can you come again? I couldn't get your question since there was a bit of a glitch.
Okay, my question is, what are the most important factors to consider during oral and written interviews?
Okay, thank you. I think the most important thing before you attend an interview is preparation. And what do I mean by preparation? I mean, you need to know exactly the job description, like what is expected from you. And with job interviews, they usually two different parts. There is the competence base and also the HR related questions. So competence based, we are looking about the technical part of the interview. So this is the part that you're trying, the panel is trying to find out exactly if you are competent for this position. You have to look at the different competency that you have in order for you to have this position. So this, you have to make sure you prepare, you read through the job description and make sure that you have some. I usually tell people that you have to like trying to mimic or try to have a friend with you to ask you those questions, potential questions that the panel will ask you, and try to practice just how to you're going to answer these questions. So the competence base, it's I think it's the core one usually, like to make sure that you are going to do well in this position. I mean, you have the credits to perform the duties, the roles and responsibilities for this specific job that has been advertised. So you, for the written one, most of the time when I will talk from my own personal experiences, that like we get into the interview and we are given very small timing. There's a timing for the written interview. So most of the time people don't keep with the timing. They're a bit so slow in writing their answers, and they keep on, and of course you have 2 or 3 hours. So, and if you're slow to write your answers, most of the time you'll end up only doing half of it. And it's through the technical part of it that you're able to go to the next interview, which is the oral. So I think I would advise that to make sure that they practice on how to answer questions very quick for them to be able to cover all the questions that are required. The other thing is also that sometimes we don't read the questions, we don't understand the question, so we are quick to answer without reading.
I'm sorry, Ms. Jocelyn is having internet problems. While she's trying to reconnect, Ms. Anyath, I have a question for you from the audience. Someone is asking, is it necessary to include your tribe, country, and religion to a CV?
Ideally, I would say no. It should not be a necessity. And now in the advanced world, they give you the option to either mention it or not. So for me, it should be optional whether you want to mention it, but I don't believe it should be a requirement that you mention your tribe. Oftentimes, the reason they do is for demographic purposes, for statistical issues, and also in areas of affirmative action. For example, if they need more women, they might need such questions. So it should be optional. It should not be a must to request candidates to indicate their religion, tribe, or ethnic backgrounds in the CV. It should be optional.
Thank you. Ms. Jocelyn is back. Can you continue with the question? Sorry, you were cut off.
Guys, sorry, I don't even know where the last, like, when did you guys, like, what was the last thing that I said that you guys had?
This is a test now.
Yeah. So I mentioned about preparation for the written interview and just getting to understand more what is required in the job description. And then I also mentioned about during the written interview, because this is competence-based, they're trying to get exactly if you understand the core parts of this specific job, the core roles and responsibilities that you're supposed to undertake. So it's very important that during the interview, you understand the question very well. You have to make sure you dissect it and answer it according to what exactly the hiring manager requires you to do. And I talked about, I don't know whether maybe I was cut off, and I don't know exactly whether you guys had me. So please, I will actually repeat myself. So the timing. So we usually during an interview, you are timed, and we have a lot of people who have content, but because of the timing, they end up maybe they are not able to finish the interview. So you have to make sure that you are cautious of the time and you tackle each question. And the other thing also is looking at sometimes during the interview, sometimes we really don't understand what we are being asked, and we tend to beat around the bush in order for us to, to just get the answer. This is something that a lot of interviewees do, and I think as a hiring manager, then we are most of the time we don't have enough time to mark the script. So if we find out that this person is really just wasting our time, it kind of annoys you. So you have to make sure that you are concise, you're precise to the, you have the content, you write it down. And the other thing about being scanty, sometimes you have someone who will just write a one-liner, and this is something that you need to elaborate. And most of the time in a competence-based questions, like we have scenarios. So we give you a scenario, a question that, this and this happened maybe in a refugee camp, what will you do? So we expect you to go through all the steps that you're supposed to cover, but then you just give us some brief information exactly, which means that you lack the information, you lack actually the core understanding of that specific issue. With regards to oral, I usually tell people that confidence, and sometimes when I mean about confidence, I don't think you need to be overconfident, but just to show that you're contented. And sometimes people can get like too confident and maybe they don't even know the answer. Confidence is key. Make sure that you are settled and feel comfortable and you're able to understand the questions. And sometimes we are faced with circumstances where there are a lot of panelists and there are different questions coming from different corner. You have to make sure that you ask. If you are not able to get exactly what they're saying, just ask for them to elaborate, to reiterate the question again so that you understand it. And if you're able to understand, go ahead and give your answer. But if you're not, and it's a trick actually during interviews, is that if you don't know the answer, it is sometimes really wise to ask them to try to explain to you. And you can actually say that, you have to play some tricks and say that, you're a quick learner. So in this aspect, you're not able to answer this question, but given a chance, you're able to learn and you're able to to adapt to the roles and responsibilities that you're given. Likability is another core thing, and I keep on telling people that, like, most of the time we have a lot of pressure with work, and we have a lot of politics in job environment, in the office environment, and so it's good to be very likable. Like, you're able to smile, you're able to answer in a very polite way, and sometimes you can throw in a joke, of course not so many jokes, and maybe so be likable. And I've known so many people who were not the best candidate during the interview, but they landed the job because the hiring manager loved them, and they liked them. They like their sense of humor and their personality. So these are some of the tips that we need to like, trying to grasp and understand exactly how to do it. And there is also some materials that you need to read, and you need to prepare for an interview. And I don't know how to attach it, but I have also like a book. It's called How to Answer the 64 Toughest HR Questions, and maybe later on I'll be able to attach it here for some people who also, you could read it. It has all the questions that you could ever think of how to answer these HR questions, so you prepare for it. And sometimes it's luck, but sometimes it's hard work. And most of the time, it's hard work. You have to make sure that you read and prepare and entice the panelists and all that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm going back to Ms. Anya. What do employers look for during interview? Should someone really prepare well before interview? I know this question has been answered, but just for you to elaborate more. And then the other question is like, what dress code should women really wear? Do employers expect someone who is coming for an interview to dress well?
Thank you very much. Without any doubt, you must prepare for an interview. Otherwise, there's no need to apply if you do not prepare. Usually, some people will just apply for any position that comes into advertisement, into vacancy, and we call them serial applicants. You just send in your CV. You don't care whether it's tailored to the needs, whether you have the qualifications or the experience. You just apply because the position is there. But if you have studied the terms of reference, you know the job vacancy properly, you have assessed your qualifications and that they match to the job, and you apply for it, then there is a need for you to do all the necessary background work to ensure that you get the job. So as employers, the first thing we do is that when we ask questions, there's a reason for them. These questions are targeted towards getting certain qualities and assessing your competencies. So the first thing we look for is the candidate answering the questions. If you don't answer the question, obviously, then there's no need to go ahead. You're obviously not the right fit because the questions are related to the job that is in question. The second thing is body language. Sometimes if you sit without showing confidence, then already it can send the wrong impression to the recruiters that you are not the right fit for the job. They would also would like to know your real self through the questions, because sometimes you can put an act, pretend to be something we are not while doing the interview. But the whole aim is to try to get to your true qualities and to assess that you're the right fit for the job. Another thing is, sometimes when you carry yourself during an interview, they want to know whether you would be a doer or whether you would be considered a high maintenance employee, whether you would wait for things to happen or whether you'll just sit there and twiddle your hands waiting for things, whether you're resourceful. These are all the qualities we try to assess through job interviews. Sometimes a company, even though you might not have worked with them, they expect you to know about that company that you have applied for and for which you're being interviewed. So you might be asked questions. What do you know about this institution? And you need to be prepared and to be able to answer confidently. And this shows that you have done your research, you have gone through the company website or read some material or have very good desire to be part of the institution. There's some expectations employers have, and sometimes when you talk the language of the institution, the culture of the institution, then it automatically makes you the desired candidate and in the future the employee also. So these are some of the things. Problems are inherent in every institution, and a question that might come up is whether you are able to solve problems or you're a creator of problems. So these are just some of a few things that employers look for. They try to see whether you're the right fit and whether you can learn the company culture once you are recruited as an employee. So these are just a few, and I'm sure my colleagues can also mention some. Apologies for the noise once again.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm moving to Ms. Keji. What are the do's and the don'ts during hiring process?
Yeah, so during the hiring process, I think it's really important to stay in communication with the hiring team. So for example, if I send you an invite for an interview and you get back to me 2 weeks later, I'm a little worried about your communication skills. Like if something comes up, just communicate like, hey, thank you so much for inviting me for an interview. This is what's happening. I need to like reschedule it. So just stay in communication, especially right now with COVID when we're working virtually and like all we have is just like email communication or phone calls. So please just do communicate with the hiring team so that you can show that you're still interested in the job. And once you're hired, you also have effective communication. You can be responsive and everything like that. Also do practice with your friends. So before the interview, just go practice some basic questions with your friends so that you show up and you're prepared. I've had some people who are just like, okay, give me some time. It's okay to ask for thinking time, but like we can tell when like you're just making things up on the spot. So do practice with your friends so that like whatever time that you have during the interview, you're not wasting it and you're using it effectively to market your skills. And I also want to say like, yeah, just don't ghost people or like during the interview, show up and like actually tell me that you're familiar with the role. This has already been mentioned where like sometimes I have people who show up and ask like, what is this job again? Like, when is it supposed to start? All of these basic things that tell me like, you did not even look at the job description. You did not look at our organization. So when you're practicing with your friends, just practice those key things that you're going to get asked, like, what is our mission and vision? What are some of our values? And how does it line up with your own values with what you're looking for in a career? So do those things. And another thing I really want to encourage people to do is just like, be very succinct. So this has already been mentioned, but if I ask you a basic question and you take 15 minutes to answer it, like, oh goodness, I'm worried, like, is this how you're going to be communicating on the team? Like, we're never going to get to the point. So when you're asked questions, I encourage you to just answer it in this way, if it's a behavioral thing. So what was the situation? Like, what was the scenario that you were involved in? What actions did you take? Because I want to know, like, how are you going to respond to situations? Like, how are you going to take responsibility? What kind of things are you going to be doing? And then the outcome, like I really care about the outcome because I want to know, like, did you make the situation worse? Did you cause harm? What were you doing? So like when you're asked all of those questions that can require a lot of details, just focus on some of the major things, like what was the situation? What were you personally responsible for? And then the end results, because I want to know that. So those are some of my tips, but number one is just practice, practice, practice with your friends, practice in front of a mirror or record a video or something like that that you can watch later so that you can pick out like, oh, these are some of the things that I can do later. And just be humble during the interview. Like, don't be so overly confident that you're bragging the whole time. And we're just like, is this how you're going to be with the team? Like I know it all, like there's no room for growth or anything like that. So yeah, just be humble, show up and be curious, ask questions, and just show that you're still interested in the process. You're interested in the organization. You're very thoughtful and mindful with your questions and everything. So just practice, practice, practice.
Okay, I have a follow-up question to that. Should someone write a thank you email after an oral interview? When and why? And why should someone do that?
That's definitely, like, for me personally, it's not a must-have. Like, as a hiring manager, it's my job to hire. It's my job to interview you. So I don't expect people to send me a thank you email. Like, I'm not doing you a favor. I'm doing my job. I'm filling this position. But it is nice to just kind of like reach out and say, thank you. Like, these are some of the things that I learned during the interview. These are some of the questions that or some of the things I'm really excited about. So like for me, it just shows that you're still interested. It's not a must-have, but it's a nice thing to just send out to show that like, I'm still curious about this job. I'm still interested in your organization. And then here's just a recap of like the things that I learned during our time together and what I'm really excited about moving forward from here.
Thank you. Thank you. Now moving to Mr. Check. I have a question from the audience. Someone is asking, what do the hiring managers mean when they say so and so was too good during the interview?
Well, thank you so much for that loaded question, audience. If a hiring or a panel says that that so-and-so was too good, it depends on what kind of interaction the applicant, what kind of show that the applicant brought to the interview, because I take it that was after an interview. So if you are able to answer the right questions, you have the right attitude, you exude the confidence that a hiring manager wants to see from one of the member of the team or prospect, potential member of the team. I think that in a nutshell comes or just that's an ideal candidate. So that could be, that's where the term, too good can be coined from. If you come, you're good on paper and physically you're also good from your interaction, your interpersonal skills, your communication skills all check out. So that's how I can answer that. I don't know if my fellow panelists can help out with that.
Anybody has something to add to that? Okay, we can move ahead then. That means it's well explained. The next question, Ms. I check, is how do employers consider fairness during an employment process? You are muted.
I am so sorry. I was having a very great conversation with myself. Fairness. Oops. Sorry, I got my notes all mixed up.
Sorry.
I may intervene in the previous question while you were going through your notes about a person being too good to be true. Yesterday, I was involved in an interview and the candidate knew all the answers. And we said the same thing. This person is just too good to be true. So there's an aspect of suspicion that can come out there that maybe, just maybe, uh, the candidate got the information, and it's not as good as he or she is presenting himself. It's not about him being knowledgeable, but having access to the information. So this is my my intervention in relation to a candidate being too good to be true, because based on how the questions are lined out and the responses, if they're spot on in relation to the expected answers, then it does raise suspicion that maybe the candidate somehow received some support from somewhere or knew the answers and so on. Back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hanyat, for that addition. I think that is a perspective that we look at as well. To answer the moderator's question on how do employers consider fairness during an employment process, well, a fair selection process consists of judging people on their ability to do the job and not on the basis of one's race, tribe, color, national origin, religion, or genetic information, disability, or even the equal employment opportunity activities. And like one of the audience had asked on if it's necessary to add their tribe in it. And here, it can create some bias if you add that, and especially being that recruiters are human. And the importance of a fair selection is that it contributes to a business bottom line by adding credibility to the official's decision. So how do you ensure that a selection process is fair as an employer? You have to ensure that a selection process is fair by creating a very structured interview process that reduces the likelihood of bias and increases objectivity. So the greater the amount of objectivity that is built to the interview process, the higher the likelihood of an agency or company or organization can demonstrate that its selection process was fair. So using the objective and consistent evaluation methods promotes impartiality and neutrality. So a common violation of the fair selection process is failing to retain selection records. You have no records showing how you selected this individual. How did you interview them? What made you decide that this individual is the correct or the best fit for the position that you're hiring for? So in an agency, if a company or organization is unable to prove how they selected the individual, then a complaint for discriminatory reason can arise. Over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Again, still with you, Achek. Can someone get employed by only passing either the oral or written interviews? Why are the two processes important?
Okay, again, thank you. Can an individual get hired by just going after an oral or a written interview? Well, these two processes in the recruiting process are used to test different applicants' assess ability, skills, and knowledge related to the job that they're applying for. So, and not all jobs require both interviews, depending, it depends on the technical expertise of that job. So you can, yes and no is my answer. You can get hired by just passing the oral interview if they just want to see your interpersonal skills. And for example, if it's a lumber yard and you just need to cut trees, then you don't need a written test for that. You just need to meet you and you can discuss your skills on there. However, you can, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up with my notes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the two processes are very important. because in conjunction with the job expert, the exam is based on this knowledge, skills, and abilities listed on the job specification. Sorry, everything is all over in my head. So I think I answered the question.
You did. You did. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to Lucy, Miss Lucy. I have a question for you. As a founder of a school in South Sudan, what criteria did you use for hiring your staff?
Thank you. We, as a private sector or private institution, we do not operate on our own. What we do is we operate as implementing partners of the State Ministry of Education. So they have their set standard for recruitment. So we also follow those procedures in employing or recruiting teachers. So Ministry of Education has got a educational policy framework that was developed in 2015, and in that framework it has a provision for employment standard of teachers. Like, for instance, they have like three categories through which you can employ teachers. The first category is it requires one to have completed the senior secondary school, and that person might have undergone teachers development, teachers professional development, at least for a period of 5 years. But in our case in South Sudan is very unique, based on where we are coming from. So it is very difficult to get a senior secondary leaver that has undergone that teacher's professional development for 5 years. So it is not possible. And besides, the job itself is not made attractive to the job seekers. So most of the qualified candidates are not there, and those who are there, they work for the available institutions of government. So it is very difficult for us as the private institutions to get those qualified candidates. So we have to, what we normally do, we follow, we employ teachers based on the category, which is those who are senior secondary leavers. So we employ them because they don't have that background of teachers' professional development. What we do is we have internally, we have a policy internally where we have some few teachers, about three, who are there as our tool or who are there as our mentors. So these teachers, we use them to mentor the new employees so that they can catch up easily to do their job to the expectation. And then the second category, that we also focus on is candidates who have finished secondary school and have also gone as far as graduating with diplomas or degrees from universities in our neighboring countries. Like, for instance, if we get a person from East Africa who is qualified as a teacher, we can also employ, we also do employ such kind of people. And these are the category of teachers that we have on the ground that mentors the indigenous staff members that we employ who have no background of teachers' professional development. The only background they have is they have completed their senior secondary school successfully. So when they come in, these foreign teachers, including the few national qualified teachers we have, do apply coaching and mentoring to them. So these are the framework that we use to employ teachers to our institution.
Thank you.
And then besides, we don't normally compromise our standard, like to compromise our standard just to get somebody coming, and we don't normally do that because we have to follow the procedures of government. And we also, as a private institution, we are competitors with the government institution, like the available schools of government.
Oh, I think she's having issues with internet. You're
So
kind
we
of
don't
frozen.
normally compromise our standards just to employ anyone. So
Sorry, I think she's
can you get me now?
having issues.
Hello?
Hello, now, yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
I don't know the last word that you had. So yeah, I was just explaining that we in recruitment of teachers, we follow government procedures, like they have a set standard for employing teachers. They have three categories, like those who completed the senior four, and then they have undergone a professional development for at least 5 years. And then also they have another category that completed the senior four, and then they went ahead to graduate with diploma or bachelor degrees. But in most cases, this category is very difficult to get within South Sudan. And then the few graduates from university or those who have diplomas who are there, they are very few, and they are basically kept in government institutions. Then for us as private institutions, what we do is we employ those who have just graduated, who have just finished their senior course, their secondary school, and then we mentor them internally in our school. We coach and mentor them on how to come up with a lesson plan, and how to set a lesson plan that is learner centered. So all those things that we apply it within our settings, but in line with the guideline of state of Ministry of Education. And besides, we go as far as employing foreign teachers. As long as a teacher from the neighboring country has all the qualifications that is required by the government, by the Ministry of Education, so we go ahead and employ such people to come and help in mentoring the indigenous teachers that we have employed to work as like we have employed to work like the sorry I was meaning to say that there are those who are like on the job training. So when we employ these foreign teachers, they mentor them, they train them to do their job well. And we also keep an eye on them, like when they are teaching or when they are skipping the work, we keep on guiding them. This is how you're supposed to do it. You do it this way and that way.
Thank
So
you.
that's what we normally do in a private school.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a question from the audience. that is asking, there is a lot of tribalism and nepotism by the hiring panel during the recruitment process, for example. How do you ensure that people are hired through merits and not through connections they have? I can give to any, not necessarily you, any of the panelists can answer. Anyeth, yes.
Okay, I will say
Thank
my
you for
part,
that
but I think
question.
okay, sorry.
Anyeth is talking now,
Okay,
Lucy.
Oh,
Lucy,
okay.
Anyeth is talking.
okay. I will just talk briefly, and then maybe Madam Lucy can continue. I think this is a very serious problem that has been prevalent in our country. And the major complaint people have is that any position that is advertised is already earmarked for somebody. There have been accusations that certain institutions employ people from certain tribes or certain communities only. And to be honest, the statistics speak for themselves. So, in my opinion, as an HR specialist, we need transparency. We need transparency in the whole recruitment process, and that should start from the advertisement. When the position is advertised, it should be advertised openly so that when a deadline is given, it's only those who submit their applications are considered for that position. After that, when they come and do the shortlisting, there should be a panel, a very representative panel that would sit down, set up the selection criteria. And when I say selection criteria, it should be on the basis of merit. What qualifications were there in the advertisement should be part of the selection criteria, and all candidates should be graded accordingly. It should be irrespective of tribe or anything. In fact, if I had my way, I would even remove the names of the candidates and make sure that they are assessed in a blind manner through a number so that they wouldn't know, the assessors wouldn't know the tribes of the people. We need technical people to be part of the process. When I say technical, I'm not talking HR, but the subject matter experts who know what qualifications are needed to be part of the shortlisting process. After the shortlisting process, whoever is shortlisted should be vetted through an oversight body. There should be a body, independent body that we can trust to have a look at who made it through the shortlist, whether they meet the mentioned criteria for selection, and then now we move to the interview. We should also have a panel of experts representing different tribes. It is said that in this day and age we're still talking tribes, but that's the reality of our situation. And the panel should be representative in the sense that when they grade the marks, any audit that is done can regularly scrutinize their work and come to a conclusion that whoever is selected at the end of the day got it fair and square, and not through connection or through the tribe they come from or their sex. So this is where I think we need transparency in the whole process, and we need to make sure it is done in a manner whereby people are not victimized because of their tribe or religion or anything like that. Over to you, Madam Lucy.
Thank you. I will interject here. For the interest of time, I will move to the next question now with Ms. Anyeth again. Do you think women are disadvantaged during the recruitment processes? If yes, why? And if not, why not?
It depends. You know, there are instances where we have an advantage because of affirmative action. And I've seen that a lot where I work, that women do have a better advantage. I can even say I'm a beneficiary of being a woman and also from a least represented country, and it worked to my advantage. But there are instances true where women are kind of denied of opportunity and exploited and are not given the same benefits as their male counterparts in interviews. So it does happen sometimes, but there are instances where we have an advantage over our male counterparts. Over to you.
Thank you. Let us move ahead. I'm going now to move to Jocelyn. Jocelyn, as an expatriate, why do you think there are few South Sudanese, especially women, employed as international staff outside South Sudan?
Thank you for that question. I think I would start by saying that international career is a unique call for individuals who have goals, competency, determination, and personal endeavor. So it is for those that work so hard that in order for them to achieve their goals. For South Sudanese, there's this, I'm sorry to start from a negative tone, but there's a perception within the humanitarian community that South Sudanese are, which is not true, because I've worked in South Sudan, I've worked in the Southeast, and also in, to be honest, there are so many South Sudanese that are competent, but there's this still perception that is luring around that South Sudanese, most of them, maybe because of the educational, the syllabus, or maybe because of during the war, there are many South Sudanese that were not able to access education. And so it is still something that is going on, and you'll find that most hiring managers would prefer to hire people maybe from the East Africa, or maybe southern part of Africa or West Africa. And that's one aspect of it, and which is not true, as I said earlier on. There are a lot of South Sudanese that actually have studied within South Sudan, and also in our neighboring countries, and also abroad, for those who are fortunate to go outside in the US, in the Western world, and they have, they are very competent. I mean, in terms of qualifications, they have the educational merit to hold these positions. So I feel like it is more of a political stance from the humanitarian part of it to block South Sudanese to be able to go out and acquire this and hold this position. And it becomes an issue, and it's something that we need to address as a nation. And there, for the last 2 to 3 years, for the last 2 to 3 years, I've noticed that the international community, there's a silver lining, is beginning to take some few South Sudanese that have the qualification and actually have the experience, and they're qualified to hold position outside. And there are quite a number of South Sudanese going out right now. So it is something that needs to be addressed. And one of the reasons could be also, that was mentioned by some of my colleagues, is that the corruption that we have in the hiring process, because most of the time we have that there are people holding positions that they have no business holding that position. They don't have the qualification, but because they have someone who was able to push for them to hold that position, they're holding it. So mind you, this is a person that is holding that position. They don't have any aspiration to go out, and because they are not qualified, you cannot have the experience to go outside, and represent your country and maybe hold an international position. Because for you to become an international staff, you have to have enough experience as a national staff for you to have that. So this is one aspect of it. And the other thing is also confidence. Like, I felt that there are a lot of South Sudanese that are competent. I've worked with brilliant minds, actually very brilliant South Sudanese that are able to hold position, not only the manager position, but even to, head of missions, but the confidence is not there. And it is because that we've not been exposed. We don't have the networking. We've not been exposed to the outside world, that we can actually, we don't have the confidence that we can actually do that. And it's so funny, because South Sudan is one country that have been having a humanitarian crisis for the longest time, for 20, almost going to 30 years. We always have a humanitarian crisis. So, and the national staff are the backbone of any humanitarian work. So it's the South Sudanese that are actually implementing this project. Notion that has been put in us that we are not, we're not competent, and we're not able to manage projects. So it becomes so hard for people to, to brace themselves and said, yeah, if I'm able to do these projects at home, I'm able actually to do it outside as well. And the best way to deal with it is also to nationalize most of the positions in South Sudan. I've worked in South that most South Sudanese maybe do not have the education. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. It was cutting out.
Yes. So despite the fact that we have quite a significant number of South Sudanese that maybe do not have the educational merit, maybe they don't have the master's or the PhD and all that, but they have the secondary certificate, or maybe at least have undergraduate degrees. We have the experience, and this is something that I've realized because I've worked in like in South Asia, in Bangladesh, and you notice that majority of the national staff actually are PhD holders and master's holders, but they don't have the experience, to implement these projects, the humanitarian projects that we have, because most of them are actually, it's just because of the Rohingya refugee influx that they were actually exposed to humanitarian work. So it's since 2017, like they are quite new to it. But South Sudanese, despite that fact, they've been implementing this project for a long time. So it's an issue. We look at it like the educational background, as I said, is also another issue, that we have a lot of South Sudanese maybe who are not able to get degrees or maybe masters or PhD. So, and if you look at the job requirements, sometimes to become an international staff, you have to have maybe a master's and above, and we don't have these South Sudanese who have that. And for those that we have maybe who have the PhD and masters, maybe they're outside South Sudan and they don't have the experience. So they have not been on the ground to have that experience for them to become international staff. So it's a bit tricky. And then job security. So there are a lot of South Sudanese, working as a national. They are kind of, they want to stay at home because there's job security. Like, you're working for this organization for 5 years, you're rest assured that you have this opportunity, like your salary will be there forever. So you're comfortable, So, and going outside, like most
Internet issue, I think. Yeah, I think Ms. Jocelyn is having connection issues. For the interest of time, I will move now to Mr. Check. I know a lot of our colleagues here have explained like the challenges that we face when we apply for jobs and all of that. And I wanted to know what are some of these challenges facing employers who are really in that step or in the process of getting into the top managerial positions, and just like to get a managerial leadership position. What are the challenges facing our people?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, guys. The internet.
Oh, okay.
So where was I? I think I was speaking to myself for some few seconds. I was talking about job security is another factor, that there are a lot of South Sudanese that have jobs at home and they've worked for these organizations for long, for maybe 5 to 7 years, and looking at the fact that these international jobs, usually it's 6 months to a year contract, and you're not sure what's going to happen like after these 6 months. Am I going to be jobless or something? So people tend to make sure that they stay back at home and say, let me just stay here because I'm rest assured that I have food on the table. So people are more comfortable. So it's more of the comfort zone. And then the other thing is also the family life. So for being an international staff, it means you have to leave your family, you have to leave your loved ones and your friends, and you have to go to a foreign country far away. And for most South Sudanese who are more, maybe because of family ties and all that, they are not able to sacrifice that because you have a lot of responsibilities at home, and especially for women, because as a woman, you have the children to take care of and you have your husband to take care of. So it becomes really hard for you to tell your loved ones that I'm now moving to another country and will be there probably for 2 to 3 months before I come back. So the other thing is also networking, and it's something that really South Sudanese have to start looking at. Networking. This is something that I've really realized and I've learned with my international staff, is that people network a lot. You know, you meet a friend, you exchange, like contacts, and you're able to keep contacts, and if there's any opportunity, you're able to reach out to each other. It is really unfortunate, and it's also because the fact that we have very few South Sudanese out there as expatriates, so we don't have this networking community whereby if there's an opportunity, I'm able to call and say, hey, McLean, there's this position, and I think we should pull our South Sudanese to come along and work for this. And it's happening. Like if you look at the Kenyans and Ugandans, you look at the West Africans and Nigerians, it's happening all over. You find that people are hiring their own countrymates. And it's something that is not there for the South Sudanese. I know it's because that we are very few, but the few that are there, we are not putting an effort to make sure that we have a community, a South Sudanese community, that if there's any opportunity that is out there, we're able to call us fellow South Sudanese, and tell them, there's an opportunity, you can apply, and we try to push. So it's really hard. And as I mentioned earlier on, the politics of it, if you've worked in South Sudan for a long time, you will notice that there's always an era. There was an era of the Eritreans or the Ethiopians in South Sudan for 5 years or something. Then there comes an era of West Africans, being expatriates. It's because they pull each other, and once one of them is in that position, then he's able to hire other people from their country, which is lacking with South Sudanese. We don't have that networking, and which is something that we really need to work towards. We have to make sure that we pull our own brothers and sisters so that we are able to have a very big community. I'm happy to say that, like in Iraq right now, we have a South Sudanese community we are around 11 people. So if there's any opportunity, we are able to tell each other this is happening and all that. It's gonna take a long time before we reach that, but yeah, like small steps definitely we reach. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, with our audience who are listening, networking is the key. And please, whenever you hear anything out there, let somebody know. Reach out and call and say, this is what is going on. Can you apply? It's good always to just try your best. Maybe you will go through, maybe you will not. But to try, it's like to have an experience for reaching out and trying to do something, instead of sitting back and saying, oh, no, I'm not qualified, or I'm qualified, but I'm not getting the job. So I'm moving back to Achek. For the interest of time, we have like 1.5 to 2 minutes for you to answer this. I ask you the question.
Sorry, can I say something? Sorry.
Sure. Jocelyn, go ahead. You said you wanted to say something. Okay. You're muted, Jocelyn. You're muted, Jocelyn.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
You said you wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say one last point, and I think it is very important also with our South Sudanese who are national staff here, because there is always this tendency of when working in an organization, we find that we usually try to shy away from interacting with our other international staff. So you'll find that most of the South Sudanese, we tend to segregate ourselves from the international staff. It's really important sometimes to link out to these people, try to prove a point, of course, apart from working hard and making sure that you excel in your roles, we have also to make sure that we have very good relationship with our bosses or our other colleagues from other different countries, because for some of us, we've been fortunate that it is our own bosses that pull us up. You know, they have an impression, they're like, oh wow, Jocelyn is actually an excellent maybe protection officer. They go to another country, and if there's an opportunity, they're able to say, hey, let me pull Jocelyn out. So most of the time, South Sudanese try to shy away from that. We're like, oh, Anna Junubi, you know, let's stick with the Junubin, instead of like trying to open up and make an impression like to your boss, you know, work hard, and it's them that actually will be able to pull you out. And the other thing also, South Sudanese sometimes look at going out as an expatriate from the point of going to UN or anything like that. You know, you can't just jump that high. Like, I will speak from my own experience, is that it was a small step. I decided to start with the national, with these NGOs, you know, like DRC, NP, and maybe other organizations, because it is easier. Because if you look at the criteria or the requirements to go out as a UN staff, it is really, really high. So what I decided is like, let me go start like from these organizations, and then from there I went out, and from out, you know, like going outside, then I was okay, now I think I have enough experience for me to join the UN. So don't look at the money sometimes, look at the experience that you will gain that will take you out. And once you're out, you know, once you have one, like you're an international experience, you're a hot cake, you sell, you know, you'll be able to get to the to the UN. So don't look at it that I'm going outside with an NGO, it's small. No, just go out, get the experience, from then the money will come later on.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You have answered almost most of the questions I asked Achek earlier. So Achek, do you have something to add into that?
Yes, Jocelyn, thank you for answering the question for me. I think one of the challenges facing people from getting employed, very basically, is just your CV or your cover letter could be coming between you and your job. And that's the whole point of this panel discussion, which is something very basic. Just making sure that you align your skills, abilities, knowledge to the potential job. And your CV, your cover letter is the first contact with your employer. So that could be coming between. So invest in a CV revamp or a resume, research, so that you are a best fit for a potential hire. Another thing could be the networking, like Jocelyn had mentioned. Networking, there's a difference between networking and having being fitted to a position. So I think those are two things that we have to differentiate. Networking is being pointed to the right direction, and tribalism and all is just where you just pick somebody and fit them into a position with no basis or merit at all. So I think those two words can be used interchangeably, or people can confuse the two. And I think that's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really beautifully explained. I am moving now to our next person, Ms. Anya. I have a question for you. Is it advisable to stay in one position for more than 15 years? When does someone become redundant at the same job? You know, what advice do you have?
Okay, I'm wondering whether the question is advisable to stay in one institution or one position, because if you're talking of that same one position, then definitely no. But if it is an institution, then it's your prerogative. The reason I say that is that when you're in one position, you tend to know everything, and opportunities of progression are not there, in the sense that that position is pegged against certain terms of reference, which you can do excellently, but after a certain while, your needs, be it the need to grow, might be beyond the position against which you are employed. So certainly, if you tell a person to be at that same position for 15 years, then I wouldn't advise it. There should be opportunities for career progression,
Mhm.
and career progression is one way of ensuring that you have loyal employees who, after gaining the skill and the knowledge in your institution, can move up the rank and continue to serve within that same institution but in different capacities. So I would not completely rule out that you can be in one institution for life, but you should have the opportunity to grow and move from your position to a much higher position as you grow. And it gives you a sense of loyalty. I've heard of people who have been in institution 30, 40 years. For me, I have not had that long in a lot of institutions, and I enjoy new adventures, which is why whenever I see opportunities, I apply. And I always look at rejection letter as a sign that I caught the eye of somebody in the panel. And when another opportunity arises, I continue to apply. So staying in the same position, definitely not. But in the same institution with opportunities for career progression and moving up the rank, definitely. You can stay that in that institution if they value what you are contributing, if they value you as an individual by giving you the promotion you need, the financial benefits you need, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Now I'm going back to Ms. Agaba for your final suggestion or recommendation. You have like 2 minutes to give us your final recommendation into what we have been discussing. You're muted. Can you unmute?
What is the question?
I said, what are your suggestions and
Hello?
recommendations so far for
What was
our
the question?
discussion today? Hello.
Yes, I
I
can get you
said,
now.
what are your suggestions and recommendations, your final words?
Yeah, I have some few recommendations and suggestions. I would recommend that the government of South Sudan need to improve the infrastructure system in South Sudan that will allow many South Sudanese to, especially the infrastructure system of Ministry of Education, that will allow a pool of South Sudanese to be trained and have more specialization that will help um, them to come up with different companies that will avail so many employment opportunities to our population. Even if um, one one person comes up with a company that can employ like maybe 3 people, 5 people, that is still an achievement. And then there are some directors of government, like the directorate of pension. They need to be more visible with their activities to facilitate the retirement of our senior civil servants, and this will create more rooms for the new graduates to be employed within the system of within the ministry setup. And also there are more individuals within South Sudan that has the the ability to come up with they have the ability to come to establish some companies. They should also pull in and then establish those companies and not leave everything to the government, because the government has got few ministries and the population of graduates graduating all the time from the institutions is very huge, cannot all be accommodated within NGO world or within government institutions. So these individuals need to come up and then be implementing partners of government so that we can have other opportunities out of public sector. So this will help a lot. And besides, the government need to motivate. They need to motivate teachers and other employees, like their employees in general. They need to motivate them in terms of salary to help them in a way that the salary that is being received in a month should be enough to cater for those specific employees to put something on the table until the end of the month, bearing in mind that the dollar price in the market is fluctuating all the time. So whatever salary structure that is being set for the civil servants should be enough to cover up this period until they receive another salary the next month. So they should look at their employees with all their needs, because these employees, they have family to look after, they have kids that they need to pay to school from primary up to the university. So the salary that they are getting, if it is not enough to motivate them to be in their job or to sustain them at their family level, so they will be discouraged and move to other sectors, or they may not even perform well because they'll be thinking of other things. Those are the challenges that the government needs to address. Back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. We are running out of time, and I'm just going to give you each 1 minute. I'm going to ask Mr. Check, what are your recommendations moving forward? You are muted.
Thank you, Miklina. My recommendations will just be 3. And just like our subject topic today, which is the tips for your CVs and tips for interviews, I would recommend that every job applicant work on your CV. Make sure that your skills, knowledge, and abilities are aligned and are all properly outlined in your CV to match you and to ensure that a prospective employer can catch that and invite you for an interview. Number 2 would be align your references as well. Those people who can vouch and actually, talk about your work ethic, or, as people who know you professionally and can vouch for you. That will be a plus once you get to the next step in the hiring process. Number 3, research. Use all the available resources available to you online to research about prospective employers, how you can revamp your CV, how you can practice on your interview questions, your interview presentations. Interviews are not easy. They are very nerve-wracking. All of us have been on the other side of the table, and it's very, very nerve-wracking. So practice makes perfect. So those would be my 3 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you too. I'm moving to Ms. Keji now. What are your recommendations moving forward? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, so I check, you brought up a lot of great points and recommendations. And I know based on the comments, like a lot of people are more concerned about systemic problems, because you can be so prepared, you can be a stellar candidate and go through the entire hiring process, but not get the job. And so my recommendations are more for employers as a hiring manager. And its focuses on have external people, have outsiders look at your entire hiring process, have them look at your application. Like, are you requiring 10 years of experience for an entry-level position? And like, what else are you requiring a bachelor's degree for a job that does not even need it at all? So, and have people from your organization who are not part of the hiring process, just take a look at notes like, oh, how are you talking about women when you interview them? How are you talking about people from these backgrounds? So just have outside people take a look at your hiring process. And also, instead of just relying on referrals or people who are like internal, or you have other people vouching for them, have a performance task so that you can actually get at people's skills, because some people are really great at talking and they can put on a show during the interview, but have a performance task so that you can actually gauge their skills. So those are some of my recommendations, like just for employers, like have that outside person take a look at your notes, take a look at your entire interview process, your application process, your recruitment process, so that you can get all of these wonderful candidates. Because yeah, we offer a lot of recommendations here, but if there's a problem with the organization, you're likely not going to get the job if they're just going to go with like internal people and rely on all of these like barriers. So those are my recommendations. I'll turn it over to you, Miklina.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm moving to Ms. Jocelyn. I know you touched on some of the recommendations earlier on, but now, what is the way forward? 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of CV and cover letters, my colleague KG and Chek has touched on the most important part of it. I would just like to mention transparency in the hiring process. There are a lot of South Sudanese that get frustrated and they lose hope, and most of them that would really not want to apply in a position because they just think they're not going to be selected. So we are actually pleading out to the HR or the hiring managers to make sure that it's transparent and it's fair, and everyone gets an opportunity to showcase their skills and experience. In terms of going out as a South Sudanese to become an expatriate, I think my recommendation is to networking. We have to make sure that we have a community where South Sudanese are able to pull each other up, and we are able to have godfathers or god up there somewhere in the world that will be able to pull them up. So yeah, that's it. And I think also to work hard and stop. Yeah, just what I don't want to say, stop being lazy, because sometimes we get tired and you said, oh, you know, work hard and prove yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm coming to Ms. Anya. What are your recommendations moving forward? 1 minute.
Thank you, Maklina. I think the panelists have exhaustively talked and advised on what candidates need to do in terms of CVs, interviews, and all that. Mine is I would just have to give a word of encouragement, and it goes out to all our audiences who are watching the show today. South Sudan is a young country. A lot of the opportunities we are getting today, we would never have gotten when we were Sudanese. So the opportunities are out there. When you look at regional bodies, international organizations, we do have our quotas there, but we are not represented. This is simply because we have this mentality that we are never chosen and there is fairness in the process. The reason I say there is fairness in the process is because I'm a testament to that. Several times I've applied for positions, not just within the AU, but even with the UN, and I would make it up to the shortlisting process. This shows me that I have the potential, somebody notices it, and as a South Sudanese, this is an opportunity we need to take. So please, the opportunities are out there. Let us work on improving ourselves, how we present ourselves, how we present our CVs. Let's be honest in what we reflect in our CVs, tailor them to what is needed out there, and perform with confidence. Ask your colleagues through the networks Justin was talking about what opportunities are out there, and with merit, you will get the position. An advice I would like to put also forward is that we seem to be very many as HR professionals from South Sudan, but unfortunately, we are not organized as one body. I hardly know any other HR professional from my country, and to me, this is something we need to think about. We need to have a South Sudan HR professionals body through which we can come together, share ideas, and try to organize how we can help our people better so that as a country we benefit from all the opportunities, not just within our own countries, but all over the world. And we can capacitate our people to compete in all the opportunities that are there for them. So with this, I would like to thank you, Macrina, for hosting me today together with my sisters. And we look forward to such interactions in the future because it's through this sharing of experiences that hopefully some members of our audiences today will take the challenge, work on improving themselves, and get the job of their dream out there in the work market. Thank you very much. Over to you, Macrina.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciated your time and your ability to come and discuss with us. Before we come to an end of this interesting discussion, I would like to thank our great panelists for taking their time to participate in this conversation. Thank you so much. I couldn't stop saying thank you. My big thanks go to everyone out there who tuned in for this discussion today. I would like also to thank our team members who are working behind the scene. Ms. Aisha, thank you so much for really doing a great job. And also especially to our UN Women team in South Sudan. I know not so many are there, but for providing the internet and also the space for our people to be able to come and discuss safely and share information. I would like to say we have now come to an end of our show. Good morning, good evening, and good night to all of you wherever you are. Thank you. Thank you so much, and may God bless you all. Thanks.